Tonight, to introduce Lise Bruneau and Marcus Kidd, who are going to perform Shakespeare's Hamlet, scenes from Shakespeare's Hamlet for us, is Tammy Peary. She is a professor of English and chairperson of the English department and was, up until very recently, my boss. So, Tammy Peary.
Nobody's Joan's boss. Ever. I also want to welcome everyone here tonight. It's really wonderful and gratifying to see so many people here to see this production of Hamlet, which I'm sure is going to be fabulous. Lise Bruneau trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London and is a noted actor and director of a number of Shakespearean plays as well as other plays. Recently, she won great praise for her direction of Taffy Punk's world premiere of Owl Moon by Liz Maestri and was on stage this spring with the Shakespeare Theatre Company's production of An Ideal Husband. Marcus Kidd also is in the Taffy Punk Theatre Company. He trained at the Shakespeare Theatre's Academy for Classical Acting in DC and Emerson College in Boston. He also has performed in Sheer Madness down at the Kennedy Center, which is a popular thing that many of you may have seen. He has also played numerous title roles in the Shakespearean productions. Both of them are part of the Taffy Punk Theatre Company, which is the winner of the first ever John Aniello Award for Outstanding Emerging Theatre Company from the Helen Hayes Awards in 2008. And they've become really famous for their bootleg Shakespeare productions, where actors memorize their lines and then they arrive the morning of the production, they run through the play once, and then they perform it that night. So it's a fairly intense, but also spontaneous and interesting way of doing it. And I think that tonight's production hopefully will show us all the different versions of enlightening that Hamlet can show us. Enlightening in the educational sense, as well as maybe in the lightening of your spirit kind of sense. These people can not only act their way out of a paper bag, they sometimes act with a paper bag. In the way a recent production, the ghost of Hamlet's father was played by a paper bag in the Skinhead Hamlet by the Taffy Punk Shakespeare production. So with no further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Lise Bruneau and Marcus Kidd, who are going to perform for us some scenes from Hamlet.
Hello. So we're going to talk a little bit first, rather than just launch into scenes and be all, weird and actory. Hello, and thank you, Joan, and thank you, Tammy, for that lovely introduction. Thanks everybody at Montgomery College. These guys in the booth are working really hard. Everybody from MCTV, thank you. And thank you all for coming. Anyone who's interested in Hamlet is a friend of ours. We thought we might focus on, because I think, I don't know, how many of you are actors? Let me just get that out of the way. Great. Good. One. Ha-ha. Good. All right, we may need you. And how many of you are involved in the theater at all? This is yes? Good. This is great. Because most of what we want to, the people we want to come to the theater are the people that don't actually practice theater. We want the audience to be all of you. And I imagine most of your experience with Shakespeare has been reading it, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah? You've read more than you've seen, right? Okay. So we thought we would focus on how a director and an actor make their way through the play towards understanding and towards performing it, and then show some samples of the results of that kind of a process.
Totally.
Yeah? Yeah. So tell us what happened. We got Hamlet.
Yeah. All right. So in the beginning stages of producing a play, you deal with the set design, the costume design, all these things 6 months before any actors are in the room at all. So you have to have a pretty strong concept of what exactly you want to focus on as a director and what you feel the story, how you feel the story should be told. All right, so the first thing we knew was we had to cut it to 2 hours. That's 50% of the play. That made a lot of my decisions super, super easy, because that meant that rather than going down, more esoteric roads, I basically only had time to tell the story. Hamlet is a story with lots of ins and outs. For those of you that don't know the play very well, he sort of gets kidnapped by a pirate ship I'm totally serious. So that's like a lot on your plate. You know, there's like murders, intrigue.
Which she kept in.
I did. We had pirates. We had pirates. Unfortunately, we don't have a very good photograph of the pirates, which is too bad. But okay, so what is your approach? The approach was going to be clarity, clarity, clarity. I wanted everybody to come away understanding the story. What happened to Hamlet's father? Why Hamlet was so upset? What's going on with Hamlet's mother? All of that, I just wanted to be super crystal clear. So we have the freedom within the structure of the script itself to find ways of focusing on this or that or the other thing. I felt like in this day and age, I don't know that it's so easy for us to just go, Claudius took over the kingdom and married Hamlet's mother, who was the widow of his brother. I mean, that's a little weird, but it's not like, oh my God, you know, anymore. It just seems like not such a bizarre thing. So in order to play that up, we decided to set it in sort of modern day Russia. Sort of Russia began as, you know, sort of like the recent history of Russia as a very sort of structured, formal environment. Everybody sort of knows what their job is and what they're supposed to do. And now Russia is a bunch of like gangsters, you know, making fast money working the black market, which is not so black anymore, with the babes and the guns and the booze and all of that, and smoking constantly, which is really fun to put on stage because you never get to do that anymore, but we were outdoors. Anyway, yes. So I felt that with Hamlet, as a result of his father's sort of structured military regime, being surrounded by this sort of loose and fast money kind of world, that would really, you know, put the conflict with Claudius into a nice relief. So that was the direction that we decided to take it. So the costumes reflect that. The fact that it's modern day reflects that. The fact that we had more guns than swords, you know, though we did have swords because it's mentioned. You can't really go that far to, you know, go against what Shakespeare actually wrote. So that was what we started with. Do you want to show some pictures?
Yeah, sure. So here is what the new court ended up looking like. And look, I have one of these. And that is a picture of Hamlet's father, who used to be king. And this is Claudius, who just took over. This is Osric, who shows up in Act 5, but Lise very smartly put Osric in the entire play and had a woman play Osric, which I thought was a great choice. And here is Hamlet's mother. And this is recently after the coronation and their wedding. And they start removing the remnants of the old court by taking that picture down while Hamlet is watching. And all of this for us, you know, while we're making it, is it like a silhouette that the actors can step into? For us, it is still Denmark. It is still, the story is still the story. Like we're not saying Hamlet took place in Russia. We're just giving it a mask that gives the audience a way in with recent events and recent history. You know.
Right.
So what happens, right? Does anybody know what happens at the start of Hamlet? Tell me. Ghost, yes, crazy, right? That's awesome. So this ghost shows up, and he doesn't show himself to Hamlet first. And it is the ghost of Hamlet's father. And he exposes himself to Hamlet's friends. So they go, this is the opening scene of the play. We meet Horatio, who's a skeptic who suddenly sees the ghost and is a skeptic no more. And he says, we have to go tell Hamlet, I know where he is. And here's where Hamlet is, at this party, celebrating the coronation and celebrating the marriage of his mother to his uncle, and he is not celebrating. He is pretty ticked off. That's me with my ticked off face. And lots of things transpire. There's a whole lot of exposition that becomes very important in this scene. I don't know if you want to talk about any of that stuff. About Claudius. Claudius is sort of politically cementing his reign, telling everybody it's legal, and you know, I'm sad, but I'm also very joyful. Like everything he's done has been about cementing his point of power in the kingdom. All while Hamlet was away at school, because you know, there's a lot of talk that Hamlet should have been the king, actually, after his father died. Well, you weren't around, so this guy took over, and And I think the thing that's burning Hamlet up mostly is that his mother married this guy so quickly and so fast, and that the kingdom is already just, in shambles and really tacky. I love that a lot of the clothes that Lise had the designers make for this new kingdom were just kind of gaudy and tacky. It just made this really grotesque world that Hamlet could be surrounded by. And finally, after they let another lord's son go to France, they refuse Hamlet's request to let him go back to school. They want him to stay in Denmark for whatever reason. And then they all go off to have their big super celebration with cannons and loads of drinking. And then Hamlet is alone on stage for the first time. And he says, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it. Fie! That it should come to this, so excellent a king, that was to this Hyperion to a satyr, so loving to my mother must I remember, where she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on, and yet within a month, let me not think on it. Oh, frailty, thy name is woman. A little month, or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body like Niobe, all tears, why she, even she, married. Oh, God, a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. My uncle, my father's brother. Wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. It is not, nor it cannot come to good. But break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. And then what happens right away?
Well, I just have to say, one of the things that I was really proud of was you see the painting of the previous king. There was some ceremony when Claudius said, "And here we are to toast, the demise of this former kingdom." And there's a little bit of ceremony as the bimbo and the grungy guy sort of take the picture down the stairs. And then straight away we're into a whole other thing, and he's talking about how wonderful the kingdom is going to be under his rule. And this picture just gets kind of dropped off over here on the steps, and it's crooked and sideways, and it's just completely been abandoned. So during the end of this, he's got his pointer.
I'm sorry, I've never had one of these before. I have to point there.
During the end of this speech, he ended up on those stairs right next to the painting, and I found it very evocative that he would spend the end of it there. Okay, so.
And then Horatio comes in. Horatio and Hamlet are good friends, and Horatio tells him all about the ghost. And it is scary, and Hamlet decides immediately, yes, we have to go and wait tonight, because he shows up at the same time every night, so they're all planning to go out and see if this thing comes again. But we're not done with the exposition. We have to then meet her family. So this is Ophelia. This is the actress who played Ophelia, Tara Franklin. And her brother is the lord who was allowed to go to France. So they're saying goodbye to Laertes, who is this young man on the right, or on your left, and his father and her father, Polonius, who is a counselor to the king. Now, Lise, I thought, had a great idea for Polonius. Very often he's played as a doddering old fool or a guy that's like past his prime, and maybe some of that's true, but well, you tell us. It was like there's a lot of laughs usually built into Polonius, and it wasn't like she was fighting that. I think she was trusting that the laughs are there, but that his story is actually more interesting. And she discovered this from reading the play. So why don't you tell us?
I found that it was interesting for him to have an objective to hold on to some position in this new kingdom. And because the new kingdom is so different from the old kingdom, he would have to sort of do a little dance to make sure that everybody believed him as a gangster. You know, that this man who was sort of like, you know, king and queen's right-hand man that was like doing his research and making sure everything was taken care of, suddenly needed to keep up in a world where he needed to cut bargains and, you know, and make shady deals and things like that. So there's this extended scene with Rinaldo where he's talking about sending Rinaldo to France to spy on his son and to make sure that his son is keeping his nose clean through like a gargantuan set of very specific and very confusing tactics. And it struck me that that might be an interesting way for us to sort of watch him struggle to keep up with this new world. So.
Yeah, she did a great job. And then he's very loving to his son. He gives him all the advice and hope in the world. And then to his daughter, who leaves, after Laertes leaves, he sings a different tune with his daughter. So he overhears them speak of a secret. And then he says to her, "What is't, Ophelia, he hath said to you?"
"So please you, something touching the Lord Hamlet."
"Marry, well bethought. What is between you? Give me up the truth."
"He hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me."
"Do you believe his tenders, as you call them?"
"I do not know, my lord, what I should think."
"Marry, I will teach you. Think yourself a baby, that you have ta'en these tenders for true pay, which are not sterling. Tender yourself more dearly."
"My lord, he hath importuned me with love in honorable fashion."
"Aye, fashion, you may call it. Go to.
"And hath given countenance to his speech, my lord, with holy vows of heaven."
"I do know, when the blood burns, how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. From this time, be something scanter of your maiden presence. I would not, in plain terms, from this time forth, have you give words or talk with the Lord Hamlet. Look to it, I charge you. Come your ways."
"I shall obey, my lord."
So there is Hamlet. Thank you. Thanks. Ophelia and Polonius, and so Shakespeare spends a lot of time setting up the two families that are going to be primarily involved in the plot of this play, and immediately gives all of them crisis, right at the top. And one of Ophelia's biggest problems is she has to obey her father, right? She doesn't actually have a choice as a woman in the Middle Ages. Well, she does, but there's nothing really for her, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, and we had a little bit of fun with Ophelia as well. Again, absolutely in the vein of taking Shakespeare's problem and just expanding it as much as we could get away with, just to make a modern audience understand her plight and his plight and everyone's plight a little bit better. We made her pregnant. We did not make her obviously pregnant. We did not make her 9 months pregnant. Hamlet had no idea whatsoever, but it strikes me in the text, and again, the text is going to tell you everything that you can and cannot do, that they have carnal knowledge of each other. I mean, that's one thing that I'm pretty clear about after not really knowing and just going and reading, and to me it seems pretty clear. So I thought taking that a little bit further, wouldn't that add to some wonderful complexity in the scenes between the two of them if she knew this and he did not? And then we'll get to this later, but in the mad scenes, I found a couple of really, really fun things to work with that I thought were not necessarily, illuminating something that Shakespeare always intended, hardly, but something that could, I think, bring us a little bit closer to the sort of impact that Shakespeare wanted these scenes to have.
Mm-hmm. Definitely raised the stakes. It was definitely for the actor who played it.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions of anything we've said thus far? I know this is a symposium, so we should all be talking. Apparently, we should all be drinking. Did I hear that correctly? Yes. Anything at all?
Or any comments on what has happened?
Anyone
thus
confused
far?
that we didn't actually mention that Hamlet and Ophelia were dating before we started? Okay, because the plot's going to thicken. So Hamlet now, in the next scene, is waiting for the ghost. The ghost arrives. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Did I do these out of order? I did. Oh, no. The ghost arrives and calls only Hamlet to go with him. And Hamlet wants to follow, and his friends try to hold him back, and Hamlet shoves them away. And then there's the ghost. Aha! Strange? Yes. Yes, so usually a guy in a sheet comes out, or, you know, some guy in a suit comes out and he, you know, talks like a ghost. Sorry about that. And tell us why this.
I thought that was really boring. I have seen wonderful, wonderful ghost scenes, and I've seen the wonderful emotion between the father and son, which I think is something that is achieved beautifully with two human beings. But the thing that I usually miss in that situation is the terror of this otherworldly being, is the fact that, you know, all these like big butch dudes are so freaked out by this ghost, and the ghost has never been even close to frightening. Also, because we were outdoors, and again, this is sometimes when logistics just make your choices for you, it was broad daylight by the time this sucker went up.
It was definitely not midnight.
Broad daylight.
It was the middle of summer.
So we didn't get any lighting effects or anything like that. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to have piles of junk on the stage as they're on the ramparts looking for the ghost that suddenly just come up and become puppets that are manipulated by two actors. And hopefully we could get some kind of movement that made it seem less puppety. I had actors that had never done this before at all, and they were just fantastic. They worked so hard to make sure that the illusion of it was great. Now, one of those actors that worked very hard was Marcus, who did not have a pair of eyes to look at, who did not have, you know, someone that he could physically connect with. I felt like that was okay.
These are the eyes right here. There's one there, and there's one right there. That's where I was looking.
Yeah, we had the gentleman who played, who sort of was the voice of Hamlet's father, visible at a mic way upstage, doing the scene, and then watching the movements of the ghost puppet, you know, to sort of match the movements to his intention. So Mark had to work very hard because, you know, it was two people standing behind these poles that had junk hanging from them, and he had to endow that with, you know, all of the background of who he and his father, what his relationship was with his father, and he did a great job.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, for me, it helped a lot. I think spatially it helped because there was another voice from somewhere else on stage. The guy that was voicing it, we had just ended up having him in the corner of the stage in the outfit with the epaulets and stuff, but we staged it so that all of my attention was on this thing. So there was almost like simultaneous realities overlapping. And what I loved about this was it was like the ghost was trying to manifest himself out of anything that was in the world, and that became something we worked with wherever the ghost showed up. He shows up later and uses fabrics, you know, in a scene, and we had people behind the fabrics, like pushing through them. So it got to be a very exciting, like, how do you stage something from the other world? And it did lend itself to a little bit of sweetness. One of the puppeteers ended up pushing one of these chained elements out to me right when the ghost was saying, you know, adieu, adieu, remember me. And we should mention what the ghost is asking Hamlet to do. The ghost comes in, and Hamlet hears for the first time that his uncle has killed his father. And the ghost is asking Hamlet to kill his uncle as revenge for that.
Which Hamlet says he always suspected.
Yes, of course, he always suspected that killed my father. And then his friends catch up with him, so he makes them swear to secrecy anything that they saw. And then we go back to, this is where she was talking about Polonius is trying to work his way into the new court, and he's, you know, getting this guy to go spy on his own son. We'll just get to the juicy bits. After the ghost.
When the madness starts happening.
This is the madness of Hamlet. This is where it all begins. Hamlet decides, after he sees the ghost, that he is going to put on an act to I think, throw off the scent of what's going on, get himself some distance and some time to deal with the information he's been given. And he only tells those two guys who swore on their sword there, I'm about to do stuff that is completely crazy, and you can't tell anyone that you know what I'm up to. So the next thing he does is...
Regicide is a bit of a problem.
Regicide is a big of a problem, right. I'm going to kill the king. So he's got to plot his way through it. He shows up in Ophelia's room, completely like undressed and weird, and doesn't talk, and grabs her face, and she describes all of this to her father, who then becomes convinced that Hamlet is in love with her, and talks about how mad Hamlet's been acting. So it's like a couple weeks later, and people are really concerned about Hamlet. So,
But one of the things that we also had a really good time with, in order to make this clear and not to be nasty to people from Nebraska, but this was an outdoor Shakespeare festival. Everybody's having picnics, everybody's drinking wine, the dogs are running around.
the kettle corn guy is cooking the kettle corn, you know. It's
Really important to lay stuff in as clearly as possible. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times when somebody's up there doing a 3-minute monologue, I catch like 25% of it, and the rest of the time I'm going, oh, look at that tree.
Oh, a bird.
Yeah, so we actually had reenactments of certain moments upstage of the speaker. So when in 2-2 Solid Flesh, which you just saw, when he's talking about the relationship between his father and mother, they were upstage, and we had a little bit of a moment with them. This was fun too, because I thought, as far as Gertrude's whole story went, what if, she was a wife that needed a little bit more from her husband. Her husband was this sort of like, formal icon and wouldn't give it to her. And when Claudius came, he knew how to treat a woman. I thought that was something that might make sense of her journey a little bit, and also make sense of what Hamlet's reaction to her and that whole situation was.
So everyone's nervous about Hamlet. Meanwhile, the king has called two of Hamlet's old school friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, or Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, that's actually who it was. She was Guildenstern, he was Rosencrantz, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then
Woman in drag.
Woman in drag.
Played a boy.
Played a boy. She
Very
was great.
convincingly.
He calls them in to spy on Hamlet. And Polonius rushes in with his daughter and says, I think I know what's wrong with Hamlet. And he says, we can test it by putting my daughter in his way and seeing how he acts. And the king says, oh, we'll try it. And lo and behold, Wacko shows up reading a book. And so everybody runs away except for Polonius, who tries to discern the nature of what's going on. And Hamlet has a great time messing with him in this particular sort of antic disposition, as he calls it. And Lise pushed us to, like in those moments, it would definitely push me, to use those moments to actually say what you always want to say to somebody, but you can't, So in all of the madness sort of acting, there were definitely very big moments where you could drop a bomb on him about how he treats his daughter, or what kind of man he is himself, while also just messing with him a lot, which was a lot of fun. And then this whole scene, we were just talking about this. What was most amazing to me was once I came out in the crazy outfit, I couldn't believe how long I had to be in that outfit. Like, things just start trammeling up on each other. These guys show up from out of nowhere. Hamlet is, I think, genuinely excited to see them at first, and then knows right away, oh, hold on, why the hell are you here? And starts putting the pieces together, but I thought maybe he gets suspicious right away, but Lise wanted me to save that suspicion for, a better, maybe more dramatic decision later. And then the players show up. This scene just gets crazier and crazier. So this troupe of actors shows up, right?
Or something. It was a huge headache.
And tell us about these guys, these crazies.
All right, so because we're setting it in Russia, hooray, we've got a nice scenario for our players. Players, what are players? Traveling minstrels. They go and they make a play. And, this is all stuff that we're, again, a little bit distant from. But one thing that I think we recognize a little more quickly is the sort of gypsy circus. There's some tumbling, some juggling, some, accordions and things like that. So we had this traveling gang of hippie gypsies coming to the court to entertain. And Hamlet gets very, very strongly involved with them.
Mm-hmm. So in front of everybody, Hamlet, and suddenly in moments of absolute clarity, he's been pretending to be crazy this whole time, and then he's suddenly like, oh my God, welcome, masters, welcome all, I'm so glad to see you well. We'll have a speech, straight, come, a taste of your quality.
What speech, my lord?
I heard thee speak me a speech once, 'twas Aeneas' tale to Dido, when he speaks of Priam's slaughter, the rugged Pyrrhus. Like the Hyrcanian beast. No, 'tis not so? No, it begins with Pyrrhus. The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arms, black as his purpose, did the night resemble when he lay couched in the ominous horse. Line. And then he says, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot is he now total gore. horridly tricked with blood of mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, baked and impasted with the parching streets, roasted in wrath and fire, the hellish Priam, old grandsire, oh no, the hellish Pyrrhus, old grandsire Priam speaks, so proceed you.
Anon, he finds him. His antique sword lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Unequal, matched. Pyrrhus at Priam drives, enraged, strikes wide, but with the whiff and wind of his fell sword, the unnerved father falls. Then lo, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of Reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So, a painted tyrant, Pyrrhus stood, and like a neutral to his will and matter, did nothing. But after Pyrrhus' pause, aroused vengeance set him new a work, and never did the Cyclops' hammers fall with less remorse than Pyrrhus' bleeding sword now falls on Priam. But who, oh woe, had seen the moblid queen run barefoot up and down, a clout upon that head where late the diadem stood, 'gainst fortune's state would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamor that she made would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven, and passion in the gods.
'Tis well. 'Tis well. So Hamlet has asked the players for a speech from the classical canon, and this speech gets dogged a lot. I did a lot of research before we started this thing, and this speech gets cut a lot from shows. And to us, we found it terribly hard to cut it. This traveling player, he doesn't have more than, 40 lines in the show.
He's wearing a top hat.
Yeah, it's this guy in the back that
Forget
did it with
right?
the top hat. But this guy, as soon as Hamlet asks, he drops into one of the most beautiful speeches either of us have ever read. And I hear a lot of complaints that it's doggerel, but I feel like people aren't really riding the wave of this speech if they...
What's doggerel?
Doggerel is crappy poetry, right? Isn't that what doggerel is? Tell me, English people, yes? Yeah, crappy poetry, right? So, so then Hamlet sends everybody away, puts the players away, and then he's alone again, which he observes. At last I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that through her workings all his visage wanned? Tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and all for nothing, for Hecuba. What is Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive in the queue for passion that I have? Why, he would drown the stage with tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty and appall the free, confound the ignorant and amaze indeed the very faculties of eyes and ears, while I, a dull and muddy-mettled rascal, must peak like John a dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. No, not for a king upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Who calls me villain, breaks my pate across zoons, I should take it. For it cannot be, but I am pigeon-livered, or ere this I should have fatted all the region, kite with this slave's awful, bloody, bawdy, villain, remorseless, lecherous, treacherous, kindless, villain of vengeance! What an ass am I. This is most brave. that I, the son of a dear father, murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must, like a whore, unpack my heart with words and fall a-cursing like a very drab. Fie on its foe about my brains. Oh, I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before my uncle. Old friend, can you play the murder of Gonzago?
Aye, my lord.
We'll have tomorrow night. You could, for a need, study a speech of some 12 or 16 lines, which I would write down and insert in it, could you not?
Aye, my lord.
Very well. If he do blench, I know my course. The spirit I have seen may be a devil, and the devil has the power to assume a pleasing shape, yea, and perhaps abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. In all the cuts and all the rearrangements, Hamlet gets rearranged a lot, and I just want to make a textual note because I think she's wicked smart. I think she makes a lot of good decisions based on you know what you need to see. This is the only bit of text we moved in the show. Horrendous things happen to this text, but usually you see Hamlet talk to the player about the play, and then everybody leaves, and then he does this speech. And Lise wanted to delay the decision until after About My Brains. Oh, I have heard this. And you got approval from who?
Oh my God, from Barbara.
Barbara Mowat.
Barbara Mowat.
Who has edited all of these plays for the Folger new editions. She told Barbara about it, and Barbara said,
Well, first of all, I said I'm working on Hamlet, and she said, don't rearrange it. Which actually made me very happy because I was feeling sort of like, I was feeling like I didn't know what I was doing because everybody rearranges Hamlet. It's the first thing you do. You're sort of like, I think we'll start with to be or not to be, and then with, like, everybody does it. And I was thinking, well, I actually feel like it kind of works okay like it is. So, you know, don't really want to change anything. But then there was this one thing that came up in rehearsal, and I thought the discovery of, you know what? Somebody sometimes watching a play, their guilt will come forth. I'll get the players to, how about if we do this? It just seemed to move it forward and make it a little clearer to me. So I did, after Barbara told me not to move anything, she did say, well, I see your point with that one,
So we got permission for that one. That was good. Okay, so after this, all of this happens in that one scene. All of this stuff that we just talked about happens in that one scene.
The longest scene ever.
There is a brief cross, wait a minute. There's a brief entrance of Claudius checking in with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They got nothing. They tell him he wants you to see a play. So he's setting the wheels in motion for this play. This play is going to be the big test so he can watch Claudius's reaction to this play. And Claudius doesn't know what he's doing. Claudius is like, a play? Great. Tell him to do it. That's awesome. And then Polonius and Ophelia show up, and this is the meeting that they've planned. And this is important, and I think a lot of people forget this when they're reading the play. Ophelia is a plant in the room for Hamlet to walk in on. So Hamlet has been summoned before he starts what is probably the most famous speech in the English language. Hamlet walks into a room looking, I think, for somebody, because he's expecting that what they say in the play is, we have called him here. We have called him to this room, right?
We've set this up.
We've set this up. So Polonius and Claudius go hide. They tell Ophelia, walk you here. And here is a big exciting choice you can make about whether or not Ophelia sees and hears Hamlet in the next bit before she encounters him, or whether or not she's actually hiding and they send her out. And Lise, do you want to talk about what you wanted there? Because I thought the set actually provided us with a wonderful option here. I don't have a picture of that yet. But there was all these staircases and stuff all over the set.
Lots of places to hide, which was really fun. And I feel like Ophelia, who's always played very mousy and inexperienced, and I get that. There's something there, you know, she does what her brother says, she does what her father says, she seems to be somewhat fresh and new in the world to some extent. But if everyone, Gertrude and Ophelia in particular, actually think that he's losing his mind, like, you know, actually legitimately lunatic, crazy, then the whole manner of dealing with him is very different. Your objectives with that person become tempered by the fact that you don't know if they're really hearing you or not, if they're really making sense of what you're saying or not. You know, it's just becomes very, it's sometimes with homeless people, you know, I just kind of don't know how real we can be because I'm not sure what they're going to do. And that's another thing, is just not knowing what someone can do. So we sort of, what someone might do. So we tried to lay in some really surprising things early on, where he was, you know, flying off the handle or doing something really shocking and amazing. Certainly something that a prince, you know, that is, you know, formal and you know, genteel, as he began the play, would never ever do. So we thought that was fun. So the boys, Polonius and Claudius, run off. They're going to listen in on this, and they throw Ophelia back on stage. When she sees him come in, instead of obeying her father and going, "Hi, I'm here to have our appointment," we had her run away so that she could hear the to be or not to be speech, unseen by him, and then choose her moment to come and stop him, which was when he was very precariously standing on the very edge of the stage talking about suicide. That's when she came in, and it was her choice, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, and Lise let me do an exciting thing. I've been after this play for a long time, and it was very exciting to get a chance to do it. And I've always wanted to try the speech in a precarious position, like to amplify the sort of debate about whether or not you're going to kill yourself, because I think it's very important in the speech. So the scaffolding for the lights, some of it was on the stage, and I asked, and I was allowed to climb it. And they let me climb it up pretty high. They made it easy for me to do so without ruining the look of the set. And so just imagine that I'm up about 60, 70 feet on here. So he comes in looking for, you know, well, somebody asked for me. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more. And by a sleep, to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose board no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue and resolution. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
My lord, how does your honor for this many a day?
I humbly thank you. Well.
My lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed to redeliver. I pray you now to receive them.
No. Not I. I never gave you aught.
My honored lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of such sweet breath composed as made the things more rich. Their perfume lost. Take them again.
Ha! Are you honest?
My lord.
Are you fair?
What means your lordship?
That if you be honest and fair, your honesty should admit no discourse to your beauty.
Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce than with honesty?
Aye! The power of beauty will sooner transform honesty from what it is to a bawd than the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so.
You should not have believed me, for virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not.
I was the more deceived.
Oh, get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent, honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my beck than I have foot to put them in, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do? Crawling between the earth and heaven. We are errant knaves, all. Believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where is your father?
At home, my lord.
Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell.
Oh, help him, you sweet heaven.
If thou dost marry, marry a fool. For wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery, go, and quickly to farewell.
Oh, heavenly powers restore.
I say, we will have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. The rest shall keep as they are. A nunnery, go.
Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. The expectancy and rose of the fair state be observed of all observers quite down. And I, of maidens most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey from his music vows, now see his noble and most sovereign mind out of tune and harsh. Oh, woe is me, to see what I have seen, see what I see. And then she goes and sees her dad.
Oh, I didn't. There I was up on the scaffold.
That was supposed to be up when he was doing To Be or Not to Be, as opposed to the weird circus people.
Never had one of these. And then, and there you can see the staircase, the set that we had, which was just outrageously cool and had lots of places to hide, and great stuff. So things are bad with Hamlet and Ophelia. Right? Does anybody have any questions now?
How are we doing?
How are we doing? Great. Oh, God bless you. Yeah.
In the playing Hamlet, Jill and I have kind of we disagree about Hamlet. So tell him what you think about Hamlet, why Hamlet bothers you, and then I'll tell you why it speaks to me.
You may have misheard me, but I have always felt like Hamlet is kind of a sulky teenager, and I've also wondered with this scene in particular, does Hamlet know that Polonius is listening, or at what point does he know? And so.
This is a great question.
Huge.
Yeah, well, no.
Yeah, and then you have to talk. Yes, okay, good, yes.
It's my why I love him. Is is Hamlet a sulky teenager? Is Hamlet just a guy? Is this what males do? They're always concerned about fakery, about counterfeit. He's so concerned that everybody's just fake. Why is everybody so fake about these things? And so
I was saying very Holden Caulfield.
Yeah, Holden Caulfield, right?
Right.
So to me, at these moments when the worst thing happens in your life, that, in my experience, is exactly where I go. Why is everybody so
Full of it.
You know, why is everybody so
Now
false?
we're no longer having a private conversation. Okay, great.
Yeah, so what's the counterfeit? Why do people choose words that are euphemisms for such things as, he's dead, or killed himself, or we people say, well, I'm sorry to hear that he passed,
Yeah.
or this sort of thing. So Hamlet is really bothered by this too, and I think maybe that's why he speaks to me, but maybe that's because, I'm kind of a teenager. Maybe it's just a guy.
No.
You are holding.
So wait. So it sounds like we have two kind of questions here. We have a debate about whether or not Hamlet's just a sulky teenager, and it sounds like there's an implication that therefore we should not care.
No.
Oh, okay, great. And then part two was.
A sulky teenager, the jest would not be.
Something that I would have put in, but that he's a teenager and that he's dealing with some teenage issues in addition to everything else that he's dealing with, that he's it seems like obsessed with pretense in a way that seems very adolescent to me. And yes, at a time when he's really suffering at the same time. But his way of dealing with the suffering seems to me really teenage, that his capacity to deal with it is really limited, and that's something that he struggles with as a character.
Great. Yes, I agree. And I have to say, we have this joke about what's your actor biography, and at one point mine was Hamlet. That guy.
That's the title of her book.
That's the title of my book.
Right.
And because I sort of went along with you, but this play, I'm the one that's guiding this play. And I don't want a protagonist that's bugging everybody on stage for 2 hours, especially when he's played by such a lovely and wonderful actor. So you have to explore that, and you have to find the potential reasons in the vast scape of human experience that might find a different way through that. Because one of the things that I found in working on this play, which was a huge, huge surprise to me, I was not expecting at all, is the amount of room that Shakespeare gives us for interpretation. In most of his plays, and having directed a couple, it's really clear what's going on. It's really clear how Romeo feels about Juliet. It's really clear, how somebody dies. It's really clear, what someone's thinking, what their plans are. Richard III, please, he comes out and lays the entire plot at your feet at the very top of the play. This is what I'm used to. So suddenly, he wasn't answering the questions for me. And I would read it and read it and read it and read criticism and read about other people's productions. A million of different ways to do things without cutting a line. So he's actually giving us an opportunity to find who this guy is and giving us lots of pathways to go down, which is wonderful, which means that you can see it 17 times and have hopefully 17 different reactions, some of which will be more like yours and some of which will be,
Or addresses the Polonius question, like there is nothing in the text that justifies why Hamlet suddenly asks her where her father is. There is nothing. You get no help at all. For an actor, that is beautiful, because you get to start dreaming about stuff, and that's great. And I've seen it done so many different ways. The most traditional way is like the curtain shakes in the back, or somebody coughs or something. But in an accident in rehearsal, the book I was reading ended up in Polonius's pocket. And so when he gave Ophelia a book, we took out the lines about, the prayers and stuff like that. So he was like, here, read on this book. And he just pulled it out of his pocket. And it was the book Hamlet was reading the last time he saw Polonius. So when we got to that part, she was like grabbing me, trying to stop me. And I was like, what the?
I know this book.
Hold up. Yeah. And then, the whole scene changed on just that little micro beat,
Yeah, which was fun.
Which was about also, I think, if I can address sulky teenager, I think, and something I discovered here, because it is a it's a question. Why do we care about this guy? What is his problem? I think I learned very much that he's an idealist, and he's an idealist beyond any idealist I have known. And I grew up in the punk rock world, And I started thinking, wow, a lot of those guys were idealists. You know, the guys that are pounding their fists like, F you, all these people that are occupying D.C. down in 13th and Pennsylvania, like, they're idealists, you know? They believe in something huge and big, and when you go against that, the world suddenly becomes very ugly, which I think is this place that he goes. This, like, really like, oh my God, you know, my sandwich tastes horrible. Nobody can make food, you know, like, I mean, but the problems are a lot bigger than that. And I think as an idealist, this is where I came, especially for this scene, because Lise kept pushing us to get past the love thing. I mean, the love thing had to be there, and it was there, past the, like, do we trust each other thing, into the bigger political story, which was, like she just described, Ophelia doesn't know what's going on with Hamlet. He can't tell her what's going on either, because it will go straight to her father and straight to the king. So here's this awful, like the worst breakup scene ever in the world. You know, it's like taking a Jane Austen novel and just stretching it out, you know, for about 100 feet.
And there's that beautiful scene where she says to Polonius what happened when he comes into her chamber. And what we decided was that was his first stop after being visited by the ghost and being told that he had this awful job to do by, you know, the ghost of his dead father, who he had probably a little bit of unfinished business with. And Shakespeare's beautiful text describes him as like holding her at arm's length and just looking at her face and backing off without turning around. And we thought, what if he came in to see, can I trust you with this? Can I tell you what's happening? And couldn't do it, which means that every choice that he makes from here on out in the play without her is going to take them further away from each other. And it's his fault, and it's his choice, and it's his doing, which just I found tremendously heartbreaking.
And I think as an idealist, I mean, I suffer from mild idealism myself. As an idealist, when something is broken, I think it also affects your view of the rest of the world. So, you know, I've thought, well, if he's an idealist, he would have found the perfect woman. Whether or not Ophelia is the sweet, innocent, honest, everything that everybody says, to him, she was perfect. So in that single moment of where is your father, and I do think it has to be played that it doesn't, I guess it doesn't have to be, but it's more interesting if it's played where she is obviously lying, you know, then suddenly that is a huge crack in something perfect that he had, you know. His mother, everything was probably fine until his mother married Claudius, and suddenly it's like, my mom has a sexual appetite? What the? Ugh. And then I even went this far. I was like, well, what is the problem with Claudius? And then I thought, God, what if my mother married my father's brother? Oh my God, I almost threw up, you know, like it just made me sick. I hope he's not here, Uncle Joe.
But also it's interesting in that first scene how Hamlet is there with his sort of like costume on, of like, hey everybody, I have a problem. I'm not going to be running around saying, hey, you know, who is this guy that took my kingdom from me? That's impolite. That's not. And he's a genteel dude. He's very, very well brought up. I think that's really clear from the text. And Gertrude and Claudius are just talking all over him. They're sort of like, oh, why are you dressed in black? Can't you get over it? And he says two words, and they're like, listen, you know what? And then Claudius comes in, and he's like, come on, you're my friend. Yeah, we love each other. You know, and it's just, they don't let him say anything. I think they kind of know what he might say. So this is the way, yes, that he's acting out, you know, his own frustration about everything. Yeah. Talking too much.
No, it's good. I mean, I hope that helps. I hope that helps everybody, because also, like, I could have given you a jackassy answer that the gravedigger in Act 4 says clearly that he's 30. So he's not actually a sulky teenager. I know sulky teenagers who are like 65. Yeah, okay. So this is awful. But now we still have to deal with this play, right? So there's a play tonight before the king. Everybody comes. There's a bunch of stuff going on, and people are getting ready. And Hamlet's written some lines for the players, and he's being very condescending to them about how to say it. And oh, that's great. And then what happens next? Oh, and then you see the players. Here's our gypsies doing the show, and that's the player king and the player queen and the troupe around there. And we're getting to the part where he has put in a scene that is like his father laying down in the orchard and being visited by the murderer. We get a little bit of... this is an interesting scene between Hamlet and Ophelia while they're watching the play. He chooses to sit next to Ophelia, while he's watching the play. And there's a lot of, again, like Lise said, there's great opportunity in this whole thing for actors, because really, you mostly just get lines. And there's not a lot of like Shakespeare giving you stage directions and going, okay, this is where Hamlet whispers to Ophelia, and this is where, you just have to deal with what's going on. And in the middle of the show, I started realizing, like halfway through the run, this could be an opportunity for Hamlet to tell Ophelia what he hasn't told her by not telling her. You know, by like, look, watch the play, watch the freaking play. Like, he still has to put on his act like a crazy man, but this keen interest in like, does she get it or not? And Tara, this is another scene that's usually dismissed as like, oh, Hamlet's being a dick to her again. But Tara like made this great choice that I've only seen one other time, where everything he threw at her, she responded with like a hug. And just like, I can help, I can help, I can help. It was heartbreaking to be in there trying to be and have her respond with all of that, you know, while all this other stuff was going on. The murderer in the play shows up, he poisons the player king. Claudius gets it. This is very dangerous. And also, the way it's staged in the play is not that the brother of the king murders him. It's the king's nephew comes in and murders him. So there's a couple double meanings going on there. And then Claudius is freaked out. There he is. Look at him with his drink. That's about to go on my face. And everybody runs off except for Hamlet and Horatio. And this is just one of my favorite little bits. Hamlet finally confronts his friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and pretty much lays down the law about, you know, how far they can be trusted. And knows what he has to do now. He's got his proof. This scene is the most important scene in the play. And this is also another one that I think I've seen a lot of productions where it's just not done well and people don't get it and it becomes like this weird mask in the play. But the action has got to be on what does Hamlet and Horatio see Claudius do? And if it's staged right, and I think Lise did a great job of getting us all in these long diagonals and making sure that we were all checking in with each other. This is the thing that proves to Hamlet, okay, Claudius did this, because he watched it, he freaked out, he ran off, I got to go kill him, you know, to honor my father, as a, you know, 10th century Dane would do. So, wait, I'm jumping ahead. Sorry. Psych. Okay, now to my mother, and then we took a break. We had our intermission here. I think pretty traditional, right? Is this where most intermissions happen? I don't know. And the kettle corn guy is selling corn. You know, phones are going off. People are laughing. And then the second half of the play opens with Claudius just having seen this impossible reconstruction of something nobody knows. Nobody knows that he killed his brother. And so he comes in and he prays, or tries to. Tell us about this.
Oh, this
scene, because this was shocking to me. We're in the middle of like setting up for this play, and suddenly I think Lise is like falling in love with Claudius. And I'm like, but the play's called Hamlet. And she's like, no, but Claudius, this play. So talk to us about Claudius.
Again, just going back and reading. I really got the feeling as I'm looking at everybody's characters' objectives and things like that, that Claudius was so in love with Gertrude, just so in love with her, because it just seems to sort of, you know, push everything forward for him until we get into that last scene where it gets a little confusing because he's got the entire court looking at him and watches her drink the poison. By then it's too late to do anything. If you haven't read the play, do. It's really fun. But I just kept seeing this and seeing him trying to protect this relationship that was very important to him, which it just seemed like there was a lot more evidence for that than, you know, I've always hated my brother, which is a place a lot of people go, or, you know, just any of these other things. I just found a lot of evidence in the text for that. So that was a fun place for us to go with that. So that when he was praying, but of course, you know, the monologue itself about, I don't know, should I pray? Well, praying is kind of hypocritical because I'm not going to give back any of the things that I've got. But sometimes God is on your side because even if you ask for help, then at least he knows you're sorry. Okay, so I'll pray. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. And then he tries, and then he gets up at the end and he's like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. And so we had him smoking when he came in and he's trying to figure out how to go about doing this and he's working it out. And then when he kneels down to pray, he puts the cigarette down and tries and then realizes that it's not according to any, you know, spiritual structure that has existed, picks up the cigarette, goes out and starts laughing. And thought that was really, really super fun.
And meanwhile, while he's praying,
in the midst
Hamlet has been summoned to his mother's chamber because she's really ticked about what happened at the play that night, right? Because she probably wanted to see the whole show. And then...
That's why.
Why not? And then Hamlet's been summoned by like 3 or 4 people, and he's like, okay, I'll go see my mother. When all he wants to do is go kill Claudius. On the way to see his mother, he runs into Claudius, and he sees him praying. And so here's a question. There's a scene of Hamlet and Claudius in the same room. And Hamlet has a speech where he entertains the idea of killing this man right here and right now. And he works his way through it and decides, no, because he's praying, and he will go straight to heaven. And that's not where I want him to go. I want him to go to the other place. So he backs off. And we played with the reality of it. I think it was, you could play it in the distance and have everybody be like, oh, why doesn't Claudius hear him? He's talking out loud, Or you could just break the reality altogether and have it become this dream of Hamlet, which is what we did, of Hamlet coming in and oh my God, I could just do it, and then just like, oh, I can't do it. And then he runs off to see his mother. So the next scene we're going to show you is what happens right after that play. Hamlet knows Claudius is the killer, and now his mother has thrown this huge wrench in the program by calling him to her room. And he's been ticked at her the whole time. Everyone's ticked. Well, I never used that word in my life. And then, and Polonius is there in his mother's room, and he's there to spy on Hamlet to see what Hamlet is up to. So he hides himself behind a curtain, which will make one of these flags over here. And Hamlet's running in. Mother! 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 Now, Mother, what's the matter?
Hamlet, thou hast thy father much offended.
Mother, you have my father much offended.
Come, you answer with an idle tongue.
Go, you question with a wicked tongue.
Hast thou forgot me?
No, by the rude, not so. You are the queen, your husband's brother's wife, and would it were not so, you are my mother.
Nay, I'll set those to you that can speak.
Come, you go not. You shall not budge till I have set you up a glass where you may see the inmost part of you.
What wilt thou do? Thou wilt not murder me? Help! Help!
How now? A rat? Dead for a ducat! Dead!
Ivy, what hast thou done?
Nay, I know not. Is it the king?
What a rash and bloody deed is this!
A bloody deed? Almost as bad, good mother, as kill a king and marry with his brother.
As kill a king?
Aye, lady, it was my word. Thou wretched, rash, intruding fool! Take thy fortune. I took thee for thy better. Thou find'st to be too busy is some danger. Leave wringing of your hands. Come, sit you down, and let me wring your heart, for so I shall, if it be made of penetrable stuff.
What have I done that thou darest wag thy tongue in noise so rude against me?
Such an act that blurs the grace and blush of modesty, calls virtue hypocrite, makes marriage vows as false as dicers' oaths.
Me what?
Look here on this picture and on this, the counterfeit presentment of 2 brothers. See what a grace was seated on this brow. A combination and a form indeed, where every god did seem to set his seal. This was your husband. Look you now what follows. Here is your husband, like a mildewed ear, blasting his wholesome brother. Have you eyes? You cannot call it love. For at your age, the heyday and the blood is tame. It's humble and it waits upon the judgment. And what judgment would step from this to this? Rebellious hell. If thou couldst mutine in a matron's bones, to flaming youth proclaim no shame, since frost itself as easily doth burn, and reason pardons will.
Oh, Hamlet. Speak no more.
That turns mine eyes into my very soul, and there I see such black and grained spots as will not leave their teeth.
Nay, but to live in the rank sweat of an enseamed bed, stewed in corruption, honeying and making love over the nasty sty.
Speak no more.
A murderer and a villain, a cutpurse of the empire and the rule that
No
from a shelf
more.
the precious item stole and put it in his pocket, a king of shreds and patches. What would your gracious figure? What? I am my mother. No, say.
Alas, he's mad.
How is it with you, lady?
Alas, how is it with you? That you do turn your eye on vacancy, and with the incorporeal air do hold discourse?
Do you see nothing there?
Nothing at all, yet all that is I see.
Do you nothing here?
No, nothing but ourselves.
Look you there, my father!
This is the very coinage of your brain, this bodiless creation. Ecstasy is very cunning in.
It is not madness that I have uttered. For God's love, mother, lay not that flattering unction to your soul that it is not your trespass, but my madness that speaks. Confess yourself to heaven. Repent what's past, avoid what is to come.
Hamlet, thou hast cleft my heart in twain.
Oh, throw away the worser part of it and live the purer with the other half. Good night, mother. But go not to my uncle's bed. The devil custom is angel yet, and this refrain tonight, and that shall lend a kind of easiness to the next abstinence, and the next more easy, for use almost can change the stamp of nature. For this same Lord I do repent, but heaven has pleased it so to punish me with this and this with me, that I must be their scourge and minister. I will bestow him and answer well the death I gave him.
Oh, what shall I do?
Not this, by no means, that I bid you do. Let the bloat king tempt you again to bed, and let him for a pair of reechy kisses make you to ravel all this matter out, that I essentially am not in madness, but mad in craft.
Be thou assured, if words be made of breath and breath of life, I have no life to breathe what thou hast said to me.
I must to England. You know that?
Like I had forgot, 'tis so concluded on.
Those letters sealed. And my two schoolfellows, whom I will trust as I will add as fanged, they bear the mandate. They must sweep my way and marshal me to knavery. It shall go hard. But I will delve 1 yard below their minds and blow them at the moon. I'll lug the guts into the neighbor room. This counselor is now most secret, most still, and most grave, who was in life a foolish, prating knave. Good night, mother. You got your tissue?
Yeah, thanks.
I heard a laugh at Good Night, Mother. Why? I think it's funny too.
Gut lugging? Yeah.
But why? Why? Why is that funny? Anyone? Try.
To me, you left as if you just had a normal conversation with your mom and said, these are my plans, I'm going, and hefting the course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, saying it when the body in your arms is,
Yeah.
the contrast is kind of amazing.
Yeah. I think,
Not
yeah.
a cozy image.
No, not at all, not at all. And I think all of that is true, and I think that's something Shakespeare is brilliant at, is giving us the depth of human experience within its absurdities. You know, that sometimes the most important things happen while you're eating a sandwich, or second time I've mentioned a sandwich tonight, or walking across the street, or, you know, and I do think they've just had probably the first conversation they've had since all of this started.
Yeah.
You know, and depending on how Gertrude plays it, and we haven't talked about Gertrude's choices at all. We both, I think, feel that Gertrude's choices, though she doesn't have many scenes, Gertrude's choices kind of make or break the progression of the play.
You can go anywhere with them. You could go anywhere with them. Does she believe him? Does she not believe him? Is she on Claudius' side? Is she on Claudius' side until she sees him transgress in some way? There's a million different ways that you can take it, which is super fun, of course.
And none of it alters the trajectory of the play. Like,
Right.
you still get the play by the end of the play.
And that's what's so beautiful about Hamlet, is that there's a million different decisions that all take you to the same, you know, ultimate place. Fantastic. But one of the ways that I solved her guilt, and I was really proud of this, just because sometimes you try to make things work and it's like, no, 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 and then something happens that for whatever reason it resonates. And for me, it was the idea that Gertrude, who adores Hamlet, all of the information that I got from the script was that he was her light, that he was the most important thing to her.
You get a lot of that from Claudius.
And you get a lot of that
talking
from
about
Claudius.
him, like, oh my God, she loves him. I can't do anything about him, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that when she sees how wounded he is about her marrying Claudius and realizes that she didn't talk to him about it at all, her mother's heart breaks. So that felt a little more approachable to me than I should never have married again 2 months after, you know, the death of my husband. I get that, but this sort of played it up just a little bit more as far as how she felt about it. Because I liked this idea that she was happy in her new relationship. That was something that I wanted to pursue, that I thought was pretty fun. So anyway, and on we go.
On we go, and then so you hear this thing about, oh my God, I must go to England. What is that about? Okay, so Claudius has ordered that Hamlet be sent to England under the auspices of doing a diplomatic mission, and it's really he's giving Rosencrantz and Guildenstern an order to be handed to the officials in England as soon as they arrive, that Hamlet's head should be struck off as soon as they arrive. And Hamlet is suspicious of that. So they leave, they go. There's a huge speech that we're not going to do that is in it is either in the quarto and not in the folio, or the other way around. There's a huge speech that even it seems like the Shakespeare's guys didn't know if they wanted it in the play or not, which we'll skip. And then Ophelia, her father is dead, and she goes completely bonkers, right?
Yep.
This is something we think everybody knows, and we loved the pictures of this so much we were going to do 2 of them because she's out of control. And here I think the idea that she was pregnant started to resonate for the actor. And again, none of us knew. Like in my playing of Hamlet, I had no idea that, my Hamlet had no idea that Ophelia was pregnant. I don't think anybody else knew. But she came in singing to a bunch of blankets like a little baby, and she actually had just had a baby like 3 months before this, so she really, she was believable. And then, breaks it, like in the next sentence, just broke and dropped those towels on the ground, and I've never gasped at watching towels hit the ground so much. So she really played with this girl's, God, you let her bash at it like 100 times too. It was great. I don't know if you want to talk about that process, but what I saw Tara doing was really playing with what reality she was in every 10 or 20 seconds. Like it was almost like she was talking to you, she's talking to you, and then suddenly she was in a completely different location, and her carriages were coming, and then she was over burying her father, and she just switched. It was some of the best work I think I've seen as an actor switch their internal reality and externalize it away.
Which Shakespeare absolutely gives us.
Yeah.
She's one place, she's in another. There's a Victorian holdover, as there are for lots of Shakespearean choices. It's kind of weird, that they have such a hold on our interpretations of so much. But that, Ophelia is sort of wounded and victim, and it's melancholy, and she's pretty, she has her little flowers and everything. This is nice. But when there was violence, it was much scarier, and that was interesting to me. That it would go from, a very sweet, patient place to her just grabbing someone. And then we also thought, if she's got a secret pregnancy, that's sort of a way for punishing her for sort of sexual involvement, before marriage or before the community has supported that. So that in some of her mad places, she would get very sexual with people, and that's one of the things that Shakespeare does as well, is that her language gets incredibly bawdy in a lot of the moments. So that's sort of what brought us to that.
So the court doesn't know what to do. Hamlet's gone. Claudius, for all intents and purposes, thinks he's going to be dead soon. And then this comes up, and then her brother comes back from France. He hears that his father is dead. So he's ready to kill Claudius. Where's my father? He repeats. And then Ophelia comes in. Laertes sees that his sister's gone crazy, and Claudius finally cools him out and says, we have to talk about this later. And meanwhile, Horatio gets a letter from Hamlet, who's been at sea. A couple of pirates show up and drop off this letter.
It's so unbelievable. This is for real.
It's actually incredible that the plot hinges on the pirates. Don't ever forget that. Seriously.
If you take anything away from
If
tonight.
these pirates did not attack the ship that Hamlet is on, he would have never gotten back to Denmark. He would have been killed.
Totally.
So Lise staged it, while Horatio was reading the letter. Like 20 of us came out in the back and just did the pirate fight on the two ships, and like we didn't have like ships. We stylized it with some triangular sails and people doing stylistic movement.
But how about this about Hamlet? How about this about the Prince of Denmark, right? So the pirate ship is chasing them. They can't outrun the pirate ship. So Hamlet jumps onto the pirate ship to try and fight them? What?
This is in the letter. Like, we're not making this up, right?
What?
This is what he tells Horatio, is I single-handedly boarded the pirate ship and really gave it a go, and,
There were too many of them, so
Right.
they took them away. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern going, oh no.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern bound for England, where they get their heads chopped. Oh, we forgot about that. He did switch the letter out. He found the letter in the middle of the night in their cabin, saw what it said, wrote a new one, stamped it with his father's ring, so it looked like an official letter.
Cut these boys' heads off.
And so Rosencrantz are now doomed. They're on their way to get their heads cut off. We actually don't learn that till later, but I want to say it now because we're talking about the pirates. Okay, so I hope everyone is still with us, because I love you, and you all seem with us, and I love you. Okay, so Horatio's letter. Oh, these guys then get together. Laertes and Claudius get together privately.
Once Hamlet is home.
When they get, he just got a letter that said Hamlet's back, and Claudius can't figure this out at all. They decide now, because all Laertes knows is that Hamlet killed Polonius. And all Claudius knows is that Hamlet is a huge pain in his ass. So this is actually a very gross scene, I think, where they talk very coolly about how to kill this guy.
The prince.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about it? No?
What am I forgetting?
The plot. What do they plan? Tell us.
They're going to have a duel. They're going to have a formal duel. Laertes is really great swordsman. And Claudius says, and Hamlet is so jealous of your swordsmanship. Oh my God, he talks about it all the time. Lies.
Baiting him.
Yeah, exactly. And so they decide to have a duel where Laertes' sword will not be blunted. It will be unbaited. It will still be sharp.
Right, because in a gentleman's duel, it's about scoring points, about hitting the opponent as opposed to actually stabbing them, because then everybody dies.
It's bloodless, you know.
Yeah.
So, oops, somehow I got a sharp sword, and now Hamlet is dead. And then he says, and on top of that, I've got this great poison.
Yeah,
and
Laertes happened to buy poison on the way back from France. He stopped
I think Claudius had it coming, right?
Yeah,
Don't
sure.
You think?
Yeah, but
okay, so I'm going to put some poison on there, and then Claudius says, okay, well, if that doesn't work, what are we going to do? Because he needs for this revenge on Hamlet. Not even revenge. He just wants to get rid of him.
He needs Hamlet out of the picture. This is where the mob thing was great. Like, she kind of did this like the Eastern European mob. And it was just like Claudius, like, I got to take care of this quickly. I got to have no blood.
And
I got,
because Gertrude, the second Gertrude hears about it, we got major
And it's got to
problems.
look like an accident. That's the whole thing. So he decides to bring in a drink.
So and if none of this works, we'll put some poison in a cup, and then we'll drink whenever he does well, and we'll make sure that he gets that cup, and then he will die by poison.
So they think,
which would be a little more obvious, I think, but you know, who knows?
But by then, who's going to care, right?
Right,
So then, while they're talking, Gertrude comes in and tells us what has happened to Ophelia. Do you want to take?
And I will preface it because the take on it is pretty strong. I never knew what this speech was about at all. I really tried. With this pregnant Ophelia thing, and with the end of her mad scene, where some of the herbs that she talks of, all the literary criticism says that a lot of them are abortive drugs. So we actually had her start hemorrhaging at the end of this monologue. So as she's talking about these abortives that she was taking, she sort of had a huge, awful contraction and ran off stage. Because I thought it would be cool if that's how she died. And then wouldn't it be cool if Gertrude, knowing that she's coming into a room with Laertes, who she just witnessed almost killed her husband, can't really say what the story is, but makes up this elaborate, beautiful, romantic, Victorian drowning thing in order to avoid the truth of the situation. And also having to deal with the fact that probably through her inaction and misdeeds, she has lost a new prince of the realm, her grandchild. So this seemed to be much more fun than her sort of witnessing a lovely creature falling into the water.
And that is perfectly great. Her doing it straight is another choice that most people make doing the show, and that Ophelia drowned, and we just, there's a question about, did she do it on purpose or did she do it by accident? And then, we realized the text also supported this other choice.
There is a willow, grows askant the brook, that shows his hoar leaves in the glassy stream. Therewith, fantastic garlands did she make of crowflowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples that liberal shepherds give a grosser name, but our cold maids do dead men's fingers call them. There on the pendant boughs, her coronet weeds clamoring to hang, an envious sliver broke when down her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook. Her clothes spread wide, and mermaid-like a while bore her up, which time she chanted snatches of old lauds as one incapable of her own distress, or like a creature native and endued unto that element. But long it could not be, till that her garments, heavy with their drink, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death. Like doing it like that, just straightforward, the servant told me that she drowned. I don't know,
What I like about that is weirdly, Gertrude kind of gets caught up in the lie. It's a better story,
It's got to make anybody feel better than seeing somebody
and so
else.
the details become really interesting. Why does she keep talking about it,
So then my naughty thing, but it was really fun, was there was one of the thugs had a crush on Ophelia, so he was always sort of showing up where she was and following her around a little bit. And we had him bring her body during this speech, covered in blood from the waist down, and carried her up off the steps just so that could help the
Not in the
audience
same
figure out what was
space
going
that
on.
Laertes was in.
Right.
One of those scenelets that we showed on stage. Okay, so then, men, they roll.
Okay,
I know, we're running out of time. It's okay, because that's it. That's the last speech you're going to hear. Thank you, Lise.
So we'll do a little slideshow. With
Hamlet's back. He goes to the graveyard. That's the skull of one of his old friends, and he talks to it. And then Ophelia's buried, and then he sees there that Ophelia's dead. He had no idea that Ophelia's dead. Her brother jumps into the grave to hold her one more time. Hamlet jumps into the grave, and they fight. And they fight over who loved her the most. And then...
On her body.
So we're stepping all over her body and fighting. And then, everyone breaks them up, and there's still a plot for this duel, and Hamlet gets a chance to retreat with Horatio, and Osric shows up. We pointed out Osric later, and Osric comes in to say, hey, Laertes has challenged you to a duel. Do you accept? And he messes with Osric a lot. And afterwards, he lets Horatio know that he doesn't feel quite right about all of this. And then Hamlet says some of the most profound stuff I think I've ever known in the English language. And it was a great joy and a great intimidation, I think, for me to be trusted with these words every night. Because Horatio's telling him, well, come on, I'll just tell them not to come. I'll tell them you feel sick and you can't do it. And Hamlet says, not a whit. We defy augury. There is a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all. Let be. So I will let you just take that home with you. Thank you. Thank you. And to me, this is the end of Hamlet's journey. Like, I think here the play could end. I think he's given up. I think, you may argue with me, but you know, he's going to wait for it to come to him. He's not going to go after it because he has killed so much trying to go after it. So they fight with the swords.
And that's an interesting thing, is that he has a great deal of blood on his hands.
Yes.
You know,
everything has been going wrong the whole time. Mother and son are finally reunited. There's a nice moment between them. Notice she is drinking. The poison cup. Never actually made it to Hamlet. And they fight, and Laertes is getting really, really hot, and Hamlet is getting hotter, and Laertes swings wildly. They trap the sword right there against the wall, and Hamlet's hand gets cut. So he's been poisoned right there.
How could it be cut? The sword was supposed to be dull.
The sword is supposed to be dulled. Hamlet disarms Laertes, looks at the sword, chases Laertes with that sword, and stabs him. Then his mother drops. This is where it becomes a Jacobean tragedy. His mother drops and tells everybody she's been poisoned. Hamlet, now interestingly, Hamlet's first reaction is not, where's Claudius? His first reaction is, lock the doors. There's treason here. We have to find out who did this. So again, this is the thing about the let be. I don't know. It's like he's incapable of coming to the logical conclusion. I don't know what he's doing. But anyway, the instant he does this, Laertes tells him everything. And then he goes after Claudius. I love that Lise put Osric in the way, so we killed Osric. Osric never gets killed in this play. It was great to kill her. And then he stabs Claudius, and as if the poison in the sword was not enough, he takes the cup with a little bit of poison left in it and makes him drink it, says, follow my mother. And then he realizes, I'm dead. And he and Horatio have a little chat, and then he drops dead. And then some crazy stuff happens, which we didn't stage. We took the whole Fortinbras, Norway thing out.
We only had 2 hours.
We only had 2 hours. So there we are. That was Hamlet, and we will love to have some questions if you like.
Yes.
So thank you. I would like to, thank you. I would like to point out that Lise directed the play. She didn't actually act in these scenes, so she did a lot of work to learn the lines and get off book and do all these other parts. So thank you, Lise, for that. Yes?
How did you let the audience know that Ophelia was pregnant and when?
There were a couple of sneaky little moments. Polonius had some wonderful lines with I'm pregnant of my cousin. Oh, with you.
Yeah.
During the fishmonger scene, what were some of the lines?
Whenever we found a pocket of a language that had something to do with impregnating a girl, we bumped it like through the roof.
She would sort of
and
like
she,
run off stage.
I'll tell you what, when she left, there was no question. Like with her last moment in the mad scene, when she turned around and said, "God buy you," and she went. It was like there was no question that she was having a miscarriage.
There was this wonderful sort of difference, and this was really fun for me too. I mean, I know that she was close to her father and everything, but there's sort of like sometimes she was dealing with the death of her father, and sometimes she was dealing with the death of her child, and she was able to make it very clear which one she was talking about at any moment. Yeah.
Yes.
It was hard, but.
Sorry. Could you explain your color choices and costumes? I really noticed an array. During the play, Claudius and Gertrude are wearing red. They were wearing white, I guess, the coronation or whatever that was.
So
and then they go back to white and gold, and then she's wearing blue. So I was just wondering, and then the red tie with the black, you know, was that intentional? Was that just?
The question is about the color choices in the costumes, so go ahead, director.
Probably, it was intentional. One of the wonderful things about being a director is that that's in somebody else's camp, and they bring it to you, and you say, oh, hey, these are all red, and that's a great idea. The red of the set was something that we wanted to sort of reflect the sort of military regimes of the Eastern Bloc countries, but we didn't want to go too far, because we didn't want to have to deal with that sort of specific thing hanging over our head of communism versus capitalism.
Right, we didn't want it to be Bulgaria or, you know, something.
Was the backdrop.
Right.
You know, that was it. So, but boy, the fashion of the sort of modern, you know, the neo-Russian, you know, rich people is pretty extraordinary, and so that's one of the things we were looking.
And a lot of it was she came with cutouts of. She did a lot of research. Like she showed up with magazine cutouts of like, you know, the look of what was actually going on in Eastern Europe these days. You know, so so it didn't come from just out of the thin air. Like the costume designer did a lot of research.
But those bold, clear colors not only read well outside, but are sort of in keeping with the fashion of the time.
And then she just went piratey. Like, no pirate has ever looked like our pirates, but, you know, they look like pirates.
And actually, the gypsies had to get a little roughed up because they were pretty sparkly. And it was like, these are not Las Vegas gypsies.
Right, these are
these are
guys
hard
sleep
living.
in a van, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
In the production, even though you didn't include the Fortune Ross Norway subplot, do you think there was any significance behind why Shakespeare included it?
I do.
Go.
Yeah, I think Shakespeare included it because there's a parallel in it to what Hamlet could have been. Because Fortinbras is someone who Hamlet's father killed Fortinbras's father. So Fortinbras is kind of also needs to avenge that, but he can't because now Hamlet's father is dead. And then so you get these like overlapping sort of revenge things going on, and that's absurd. But between like Claudius and Hamlet's father, and Hamlet and Fortinbras, and Laertes and Hamlet, and Laertes and Fortinbras, you get all these like brother, son, father relationships that just sort of cast a great relief. And Fortinbras is the man Hamlet should have been. Right. I think, or is because he does end up inheriting the kingdom. And Hamlet says when he's dying, give it to Fortinbras. Like they know Fortinbras is on his way back.
Right.
And you know, he just hands the kingdom over to somebody from another country. But
and it was agony for me to cut that beautiful monologue while, you know, Fortinbras's soldiers are lining up and Hamlet is just going, look at me and look at them. Like, I can't get any of this together at all, and these people are just devoting their lives to fighting for a cause for someone else.
Right.
It's just
that's the big speech we mentioned at the end of Act 4. That is that. It's like Hamlet sees Fortinbras living and doing everything he should be doing, and Hamlet's like, I can't even. I stab in the dark, and I'm killing the wrong people. You know. So, yes.
Well, that brings me to another point when you were saying at the very end when he says trees and lock the doors, which sounds sort of off point at that particular point in time. But I think that has to do with sort of the full circle that you're reminded he's a prince.
Yes. Right.
He does get better at it. He does, thankfully.
And he is the king for his last 20 lines of verse. He is the king of Denmark. You know? I mean, really. And I didn't realize that until like we opened the show and I was like, holy crap, wait, and I'm dying, but I'm the king. But like, there's so many things like that. I do think it's a tale of him growing up. I think he is very adolescent at the beginning of the play. He's only been trained to be a prince. He's never had to actually be a leader. And that's one of his problems, is that his nobility is running into the savagery of the world. And when he says to his mother, this thing I just read about, like, let be, if there's, you know, the fall of the sparrow, I think that's where he gets to. That's where he's like, I just have to live with the life I'm getting. He starts putting it together when he tells his mother, heaven has pleased it so to punish me with this and this with me, that I must be their scourge and minister. That suddenly sang out volumes to me after dealing with this play for years. I love this play. I read it all the time. I suddenly heard that line like I heard it for the first time, that he feels tormented that his life is not what he imagined. That I have to accept that this is my life. I'm a killer. And everything in me was trained to be a nobleman. Yes?
And you take the twist that Hamlet was actually villainous?
Totally.
All
yeah.
His apparition was contrived? and that he had a political complex and he wanted to get his kingdom back?
Totally.
You can do that. Yeah. And it's been done. That stuff's been done many times. Somebody did it last year where it was, the whole thing was a dream, a nightmare he was having. So he was like on a mattress the whole time. People, whatever.
Actually, there's one that David Tennant and who else is in it?
Patrick Stewart plays Claudius.
Patrick Stewart is Claudius and the ghost of Hamlet's father, right?
Yeah.
That makes some outrageous choices. These Brits, they've lived with these plays so long, they just come up with these fantastic ideas, but, I want you all to see it, not to give anything away, but like one of the coolest choices that I saw was Ophelia goes crazy because she sees what happened. She sees at the play that Claudius is guilty of murdering Hamlet's father, understands everything that Hamlet is going through, sees the corruption of the court, still can't get Hamlet to talk straight to her, and that's what makes her lose her mind. So it's like in defense of him that she goes crazy. Ooh, that's a good one.
Here's
Claudius.
Yeah, the important consideration for that kind of question is, couldn't you do this? The answer is yes, but in the hands of a good director and a bunch of good actors, it has to make sense, and I think that you have a better shot of it because you can't just smarmily walk in there and be like, well, I think Hamlet's this, and then, I think the show will fall apart. There is text that you have to deal with.
But this is the thing, too, is that he's very good at directing his own plays.
Right.
There are certain things that he will not let you do unless you cut, and you are welcome to do that because he's dead. But it's interesting how sometimes you make a choice that's not really in the text, and you cut the things that contradict it, and it's okay, but you've assigned a characteristic to someone, or you've given someone a piece of history that isn't, necessarily Shakespeare's intention. Well, there are resonances and word choices and things that you had no idea you were getting involved in that negate the choice that you were trying to make. And you need to be sensitive to that and make sure that, you're not really throwing a spanner in the works.
Because you could back yourself into a corner really quickly, just given the extent of how everybody's action in these plays have vast consequences.
But I'm obviously a huge supporter of that.
I don't buy the Oedipal complex, though. I think that's great.
We were both dead set against that one.
I think that one has to go away. But any other questions? Yes? Yes, in the back. Yay.
So I was wondering, how did you end the play with the ratio?
How would you what?
How did you end the play with the ratio? Did you just have him stand up and walk out, and later it's implied he wouldn't go Fortin Ross? Or how did you end it without Fortin Ross and with the ratio?
Right, and can I just say, I was so relieved to not have to deal with Fortinbras because I don't think after this beautiful tragedy, the end of the play, that I would be able to bring somebody in that's just like, what the hell happened
over bodies.
It's one of the funniest scenes in Shakespeare to me. It's just like this guy coming in and going, who are these people? Like there's like 10 dead people. So I was relieved to not have to deal with that. But we just had Hamlet die in Horatio's arms, and Horatio spoke the finalization. I might have him back.
Your script is here. The last lines.
Quite beautiful, and interestingly, I had just in my initial cut, I just had Hamlet die, and a friend that knew the play much better than I said, "Do you really want to end it right there?" And I thought, "No, you're right." And especially Horatio was wonderful, so we wanted to give him a little bit more.
Right, so Horatio, good night. You don't have the last page.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, you put it, oh, right. Oh, yeah, because you decided to put it back.
Yeah.
So it used to be, good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels, sing thee to thy rest.
Done, everybody go home.
And then she realized the whole cast, the whole court was on stage. Everybody who survived this nightmare was on stage. And Horatio was holding Hamlet in his arms. And this, I think this was a great eulogy. Go ahead, you do it.
I hope I can read my writing.
Yeah.
So let me speak to the yet unknowing how these things came about. So shall the world hear of carnal, bloody, and unnatural acts, of accidental judgments, casual slaughters, of deaths put on by cunning and forced cause. And in this upshot, purposes mistook, fallen on the inventors' heads. All this can I truly deliver.
And this,
the world.
Yeah. She good. What was great about it was, for me, there's that wild exchange at the end where Horatio wants to kill himself too, and they fight over the cup, and Hamlet's like, no, 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 you're the only one that can set this right. And that became the focus of the end of the play, was Hamlet's, nobody else knows. Horatio is actually the only person he could ever trust. And so we left it with that thing. Instead of the Fortinbras coming in and taking over the kingdom, which was probably important to the Elizabethans, the most important thing to us was that Hamlet know that his story would be told correctly, which is the most important thing to us.
And that Horatio had a really amazing bead on it that was quite universal and quite tragic, and a lot of actions that were falling in on, the inventors' heads.
And beautifully, as Hamlet says himself to Horatio, like, who are you? You're the common person. There's nothing about you that would make me want to insinuate myself into your friendship, except that you are honest. And I think that is a beautiful thing. So, thank you all very much. We're out of time, but I thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Joan.